The year was 2387, and the galaxy trembled under the rule of the Apex Coalition. They were the most feared group of aliens in known space. For over 2,000 years, they had crushed every species that stood in their way. Their ships were black as night, and their weapons could turn entire planets into dust. The Coalition was made up of 3 main species, each more terrifying than the last. The Vorthic were massive reptilian creatures, standing 12 feet tall, with scales harder than steel. They came from a world of endless volcanoes and poisonous air. The heat that would kill most beings felt like a cool breeze to them. Their leader, Warlord Thexkar, had personally killed over 300 enemy commanders with his bare claws. The second species was the Krell, insect-like warriors with 4 arms and natural armor that could stop bullets. They lived on a planet where the gravity was 5 times stronger than Earth's, and toxic storms raged for months at a time. The Krell could survive in space without suits for hours and could tear through metal doors like paper. The third group was the Nethys, beings of pure energy that could phase through solid matter. They fed on the fear and pain of other creatures. Their home world was a place of eternal darkness, where the temperature never rose above freezing. They could possess the minds of weaker beings and make them fight against their own kind. Together, these 3 species had built an empire that spanned half the galaxy. They called themselves the Apex Coalition because they believed they were the ultimate predators. No species had ever defeated them in battle. Most surrendered as soon as they saw the Coalition's black ships appear in their skies. The Coalition had a simple rule: submit or die. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. Entire civilizations had been wiped out simply because they had tried to resist. On the other side of the galaxy, far from the Coalition's reach, lived a species that had not yet learned to fear the black ships. Humans had been exploring space for less than 400 years. They had colonies on 57 worlds, but compared to the Coalition's vast empire, humanity was tiny and unknown. Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of the exploration ship. Horizon Dawn. He was a tall man with brown hair and steady blue eyes. At 35 years old, he had spent half his life in space. The Horizon Dawn was not a warship. It was built to explore new worlds and make contact with friendly aliens. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal," said Lieutenant Amy Brooks, the ship's communications officer. She was a young woman with red hair and a sharp mind for languages. "It's coming from the Kepler 442 system." Miller walked over to her station. "What kind of signal?" "It's from Research Station Alpha 7. They went dark 3 days ago after reporting first contact with unknown aliens." Amy played the message. The voice was full of panic and fear. "This is Station Alpha 7. We are under attack. The aliens... They're not here to talk. They're killing everyone. They have weapons we've never seen before. If anyone receives this message, stay away from the Kepler 442 system. Tell Earth... Earth. We tried to make peace." The message ended in screams and static. Dr. Lisa Carter, the ship's scientist, looked up from her computer. She was a woman, in her 40s with gray hair and kind eyes. She had spent her whole career studying alien life forms, but she had never encountered anything hostile. "Captain, I've been analyzing the data they sent before the attack. These aliens are unlike anything we've seen before. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours." Commander Steve Rodriguez, the ship's tactical officer, shook his head. He was a stocky man with dark hair and numerous scars from his time in the colonial marines. "With respect, Doctor, every alien we've met has been peaceful. Maybe this is just a misunderstanding." Miller made his decision. "Set course for Kepler 442. We're going to investigate." "Sir, shouldn't we wait for backup?" Amy asked. The research station has 47 people on it. If there's any chance they're still alive, we have to try to help them." Miller sat down in his captain's chair. "Besides, we're explorers. This is what we do." What none of them knew was that the attack on Research Station Alpha 7 had been ordered by General Zefter, a Vorthic commander who served directly under Warlord Thex Kar. The Coalition had been expanding their territory again, and the human research station had been in their path. Zefter stood in the command center of his ship, the Devourer. He was 11 feet tall, with dark green scales and yellow eyes that glowed in the dim light. His claws were stained with the blood of countless enemies. To him, the attack on the research station had been nothing more than pest control. "Report," he growled to his second-in-command, a smaller Vorthic named Kex Dal. "The facility has been destroyed, General. All humans have been eliminated. We recovered some of their technology and data files." Zefter looked at the data on his screen. The humans seemed to be a young species, barely capable of space travel. Their weapons were primitive, and their ships were slow and weak. They would pose no threat to the Coalition. "Interesting," he said. "These humans appear to be from a world called Earth. Send a probe to gather more information. If they have any useful resources, we will take them. If not, we will destroy them." The probe was launched toward Earth, carrying sensors and weapons. It would take several weeks to reach the human home world, but Zefter was patient. He had destroyed dozens of species before, and humans would be no different back on the Horizon Dawn. Miller and his crew prepared for their mission. They had no idea that they were about to become the first humans to encounter the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. They thought they were going on a rescue mission. Instead, they were about to start a war that would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward a meeting with destiny. In a few days, the galaxy would learn that there was a new player in the game of survival. The Apex Coalition was about to discover that they were not the only apex predators in the universe. The Horizon Dawn dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge, looking at the main screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. The research station was nothing but twisted metal and debris floating in space. 3 massive black ships patrolled the area like hungry sharks. "My God," whispered Dr. Lisa Carter. "They destroyed everything." The Coalition ships were unlike anything humans had ever seen. They were dark as space itself, with sharp edges and weapon ports that glowed with deadly energy. Each ship was 3 times the size of the Horizon Dawn. "Captain, we're being scanned," reported Lieutenant Amy Brooks. Her voice was steady, but Miller could see the fear in her eyes. "Return the scan," Miller ordered. "Let them know we're here." Commander Steve Rodriguez looked at his tactical display. "Sir, those ships are armed with enough firepower to level the small moon. We should leave now while we still can." Before Miller could respond, the communication system crackled to life. A horrible voice filled the bridge. It was deep and harsh, like metal scraping against stone. "Unknown vessel, this is General Zefter of the Vorthic Empire. You have entered Coalition space without permission. Surrender immediately, or be destroyed." Miller straightened his uniform and walked to the center of the bridge. "This is Captain Jake Miller of the Earthship Horizon Dawn. We received a distress signal from our research station. We're here to investigate and rescue any survivors." There was a long pause. Then Zefter's voice returned, filled with something that might have been amusement. "Your research station has been eliminated. All humans are dead. You have 30 seconds to surrender, or you will join them." "We cannot surrender," Miller said firmly. "We demand to know what happened to our people." "You demand?" Zefter's voice turned dangerous. "You are prey. Prey does not make demands. 20 seconds. Miller looked at his crew. They were all scared, but they stood ready to follow his orders. These were good people, explorers and scientists, who had never fired a shot in anger. But they were also human, and humans did not give up easily. "All hands, battle stations," Miller announced over the ship's intercom. "This is not a drill." The Horizon Dawn was not a warship, but it had defensive systems. Rodriguez powered up the shields and weapons. Amy began sending a message to Earth, warning them about the Coalition. Dr. Carter started analyzing the enemy ships, looking for any weakness they could exploit. The 30 seconds ended. The Coalition ships opened fire. The first blast shook the Horizon Dawn like a toy. The lights flickered and sparks flew from damaged control panels. The second blast knocked several crew members to the floor. "Shield down to 60%, Rodriguez reported. "We can't take much more of this." Miller gripped his chair as another blast hit them. "Return fire. All weapons." The human ship's lasers struck the lead Coalition vessel. The beams barely scratched the dark hull. It was like throwing stones at a mountain. "No effect, sir," Rodriguez said. "Their armor is too strong." Zefter's voice came over the communications again. "Is that all you can do? Pathetic. End this." The Coalition ships moved closer, preparing for the final attack. But Miller had an idea. He had spent years exploring asteroid fields and nebulae. He knew how to use space itself as a weapon. "Rodriguez, target the asteroid field behind them. Maximum power." "Sir, that will just make more debris. Trust me, do it." Rodriguez fired at the largest asteroid. The explosion created a cloud of rock and dust that spread rapidly toward the Coalition ships. The aliens, expecting another direct attack, were caught off guard. "Now, full power to engines. Take us into the dust cloud." The Horizon Dawn disappeared into the swirling debris. The Coalition ships followed, but their sensors were useless in the chaos. Miller used his knowledge of space navigation to stay hidden while the enemy ships searched blindly. "Amy, can you get a lock on their communications?" "Working on it, Captain. I'm picking up multiple signals between their ships." "Can you jam them?" "I can try." Amy's fingers flew over her controls. "Got it. They can't talk to each other." Without communication, the Coalition ships became confused. They fired at shadows and empty space, sometimes nearly hitting each other. Miller used this confusion to his advantage. Rodriguez hit the middle ship's engine section. "Dr. Carter, what did you find?" "Their ships are powerful, but not designed for this kind of fighting," Carter reported. "They're built for direct assault, not tactics." Miller smiled grimly. "Then we won't fight them directly." The Horizon Dawn darted out of the dust cloud, fired at the middle ship's engines, and disappeared again before the aliens could respond. The Coalition vessel began to spin out of control. General Zefter roared in fury. He had never faced an enemy that used such cowardly tactics. In his mind, real warriors fought face to face, not hiding like insects. "Find them!" He screamed. His crew used the gravity sensors. But the humans were already moving. Miller had Amy broadcast a false signal from the other side of the system. When the Coalition ships turned to investigate, the Horizon Dawn attacked from behind. This time, their target was the weapon systems. Human engineering was not as advanced as Coalition technology, but humans understood that every machine had weak points. Rodriguez aimed for the joints and connections, the places where even the strongest armor was thin. The Coalition ships began to suffer real damage. One lost its main cannon. Another started leaking atmosphere. For the first time in centuries, Coalition warriors felt something they had almost forgotten: fear. "Impossible," Zefter growled. "They are weak. They are prey." But prey did not fight. Like this, prey ran away, or surrendered. These humans were doing something the Coalition had never seen before. They were using their minds as weapons. The battle continued for 3 hours. The Horizon Dawn was badly damaged, but they had crippled. One Coalition ship can damage the others. More importantly, they had shown the galaxy's most feared predators that humans were not easy prey. Finally, Miller made a decision that would change the course of history. Instead of continuing to fight, he opened a channel to all 3 Coalition ships. This is Captain Miller. We are willing to cease hostilities if you allow us to search for survivors from our research station. Zefter was so surprised that he actually considered the offer. No species had ever fought the Coalition to a standstill and then asked for negotiations. Most were either dead or begging for mercy by now. You fought well for prey, he admitted. But you cannot win. More ships are coming. And we will fight them too, Miller said simply. We will keep fighting until every last human is dead, or until you let us save our people. There was something in the human's voice that made Zefter pause. It was not fear or anger. It was determination. The kind of determination that turned prey into predators. Very well, Zefter said finally. Search for your dead. But when you are finished, you will leave and never return. Miller nodded. Understood. Thank you. As the Horizon Dawn began searching the debris field, Zefter watched the humans work. They moved with purpose and efficiency, never giving up hope of finding survivors. Even though the research station was destroyed, they searched every piece of wreckage. For the first time in his long life, Zefter wondered if the Coalition had made a mistake. These humans were not like other species. They did not break when faced with superior force. They adapted. They learned. They fought back. And Hen? That made them very dangerous indeed. A message from Captain Miller reached Earth 3 days later. Admiral Paul Bennett stood in the war room of Colonial Defense Command, watching the recording for the 5th time. The images of the destroyed research station and the massive Coalition ships filled the large screen. How many of these Coalition ships are there? Asked General Karen White, head of the Colonial Marines. Unknown, sir, replied Colonel Jack Thompson, the military intelligence chief. But based on Captain Miller's report, each ship carries enough firepower to destroy one of our cities. Bennett was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had fought in the colonial wars 20 years ago, but this was different. This was not a fight between human colonies. This was a fight for the survival of the human race. What do we know about these aliens? He asked Dr. Sarah Blake, Earth's top alien expert, stepped forward. She was a small woman with short black hair and thick glasses. Based on the data Captain Miller sent, we're dealing with 3 different species. The Vorthic are the leaders. They're physically powerful and very aggressive. The Krell are their soldiers, and the Nethys are some kind of energy beings. How do we fight them? Bennett asked. We don't, said Senator Robert Hayes, the government's liaison to the military. We should try to negotiate. Maybe we can find a peaceful solution. Thompson shook his head. Sir, they destroyed our research station without warning. They killed 47 civilians. These are not the kind of aliens who want to talk. Bennett made his decision. All defense fleets are to return to Earth immediately. I want every ship we have defending our home world. And send word to all colonies. Prepare for war. The orders went out across human space. On 57 worlds, colonists received the same message. Hostile aliens were coming, and they needed to be ready to fight. Most of the colony worlds were peaceful places. The settlers had come to farm or mine or build new lives far from Earth. They had no armies and few weapons. But they were human, and humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. They would not give up without a fight. On the agricultural world of New Montana, Tom Mitchell read the warning message to his family. He was a farmer, not a soldier, but he had served in the Colonial Guard when he was younger. His wife, Mary, was a doctor. Their 2 children, Pete and Susan, were in high school. "What does this mean, Dad?" Pete asked. Tom looked at his son. The boy was 16, old enough to understand the truth. "It means we might have to fight to protect our home." "But we're just farmers," Susan said. "We don't know how to fight aliens." Mary put her arm around her daughter. "We'll learn. We'll do whatever we have to do." Across the colony, similar conversations were happening. The colonists began to organize. They turned their farming equipment into weapons. Tractors became mobile gun platforms. Harvesters were converted into armored vehicles. The underground storage areas became bunkers. Tom was elected to lead the colony's defense. He had no military training for this kind of war, but he understood the land and the people. He also understood something the Coalition did not. Humans were at their most dangerous when they were protecting their families. Meanwhile, in space, the Coalition was preparing for what they thought would be an easy conquest. Warlord Thex Carr had assembled a fleet of 30 ships. It was the largest force ever sent against a single species. "These humans interest me," Thex Carr said to his commanders. "They fought General Zefter to a standstill? That has never happened before. They got lucky," said Admiral Vexther, a massive Vorthik with scars covering his face. "1 ship against 3 is not a real battle." "Perhaps," Thex Carr replied, "but I did not become the ruler of the Coalition by underestimating my enemies. We will crush them completely." The Coalition fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for New Montana. They had chosen the agricultural world as their first target because it seemed weak and defenseless. They expected to destroy it in a few hours, then move on to the next human colony. Captain Miller and the Horizon Dawn were already at New Montana when the Coalition fleet arrived. The exploration ship had been damaged in the fight at Kepler 442, but it was still functional. Miller had come to warn the colonists and help them prepare. 30 ships, Commander Rodriguez reported. "They're taking position around the planet." Miller opened a channel to the surface. "Tom, they're here. Are you ready?" Tom Mitchell stood in the colony's command center, looking at displays that showed Coalition ships spreading across the sky. "As ready as we can be." "You'd better get down." "Here, Jake. This is going to be a ground fight." The Horizon Dawn landed at the colony's spaceport. Miller and his crew joined the colonists in their preparations. Dr. Carter set up a medical station with Mary Mitchell. Amy Brooks worked with the colony's communications team to coordinate the defense. The Coalition attack began at dawn. Drop. Ships descended from orbit, carrying Krell warriors and Vorthik soldiers. The aliens expected to find frightened farmers running in panic. Instead, they found a carefully planned defense. The first wave of Coalition troops landed in what looked like an empty field. But Tom had turned the field into a trap. Hidden explosives detonated under the alien soldiers, and human fighters attacked from concealed positions in the surrounding woods. The Krell warriors were tough and well-armed, but they had never faced an enemy that used the terrain so effectively. The humans knew every hill, every tree, every stream. They appeared from nowhere, fired their weapons, and disappeared again. Lieutenant Amy Brooks found herself fighting alongside teenage colonists who had never held a gun before yesterday. But they were fighting for their homes, and that made them dangerous. "Contact left," shouted Pete Mitchell, firing his rifle at a group of Krell soldiers. Amy rolled behind a rock and returned fire. The aliens were strong, and their natural armor was tough, but human weapons could still hurt them. More importantly, the humans were not fighting like the Coalition expected. Most species the Coalition had conquered fought in organized military units. They had ranks and formations and predictable tactics. The humans of New Montana fought like a pack of wolves, coordinating their attacks, but staying flexible and adaptive. Tom Mitchell commanded the defense from a hidden bunker, but he was not sitting safely in the back. He led attacks himself, moving from position to position, always where the fighting was hardest. "They're trying to take the power plant," reported one of his fighters. "Not if I can help it," Tom replied. He grabbed his weapon and headed for the tune. Battle. The coalition forces were getting frustrated. They had expected to crush the human resistance in the first hour. Instead, they were taking heavy casualties while the humans seemed to be everywhere at once. General Zefter, commanding the ground assault, found himself facing a type of warfare he had never seen before. The humans did not stand and fight. They struck and faded away, only to strike again from a different direction. "Where are they?" He roared at his soldiers. How can such weak creatures be so hard to find? The answer was simple. The humans were not fighting like prey. They were fighting like predators, using intelligence and teamwork to overcome a stronger enemy. The battle raged for 3 days. The coalition had superior numbers and weapons, but the humans had something more important. They were fighting for their survival. Every man, woman, and child on New Montana was part of the defense dot by the end of the 3rd day. The coalition had taken the colony's main settlement, but at a terrible cost. They had lost more soldiers in 3 days than they usually lost in 3 months. And the humans were still fighting. Warlord Thexkar stood in the ruins of the colony's town hall, looking at the reports from his commanders. The numbers were almost impossible to believe. His forces had suffered 60% casualties. The humans had lost fewer than 20% of their fighters. "This is not possible," he said to Zefter. "They are a young species. They should not be able to fight like this." "Perhaps we have been wrong about them," Zefter replied. "Perhaps they are not prey at all." For the first time in his long life, Thexkar felt something he had not experienced since his youth: doubt. The coalition had built their empire on the belief that they were the ultimate predators. But if humans could fight like this, what did that make them? The answer would come soon enough. Because news of the battle in New Montana was spreading across the galaxy, and other species were starting to wonder if the coalition was as invincible as they claimed to be. The news of the battle at New Montana spread through human space like wildfire. On every colony world, people gathered around communication screens to hear the impossible story. A small farming community had held off the galaxy's most feared warriors for 3 days, but the coalition was not finished. Warlord Thexkar was furious about the losses at New Montana. He had never been challenged like this before, and his pride demanded revenge. "Bring me the harvester ships," he commanded his fleet admiral. "We will show these humans what happens when they defy the coalition." The harvester ships were the coalition's most terrible weapons. They were massive vessels designed to strip entire planets of all life. The coalition had used them only 12 times in their history, and each time had left a dead world behind. 3 harvester ships were brought from the coalition's core worlds. Each ship was the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. Their target was New Pittsburgh, a human industrial world with a population of 8 million. Admiral Paul Bennett received the intelligence reports about the harvester ships with growing horror. "How do we fight something like that?" he asked his staff. "We don't," admitted Colonel Thompson. "Our biggest ships are like toys compared to those monsters." But Dr. Sarah Blake had an idea. She had been studying the reports from New Montana and had noticed something important. The coalition fights the same way every time. They use overwhelming force and expect the enemy to surrender. But what if we don't fight them the way they expect? "What do you mean?" Bennett asked. "New Pittsburgh is a mining world. The colonists have been digging deep tunnels for over 50 years. What if we turn the entire planet into a weapon? Bennett stared at her. You mean blow up the planet? Not the whole planet. Just parts of it. We could trigger controlled explosions in this. Mine shafts. Create earthquakes. Turn their own size against them. It was a desperate plan, but it might work. Bennett contacted New Pittsburgh and explained the situation to the colonial government. The people had a choice: evacuate or fight. They chose to. Fight. Engineer Sarah Blake led the effort to turn New Pittsburgh into a trap. She was Dr. Blake's younger sister, and she had spent her career designing mining equipment. Now she was designing the biggest explosion in human history. Working with the colony's miners, she placed charges in the deepest shafts. The explosions would be timed to create a chain reaction that would shake the entire planet. It would be dangerous for the colonists, but it might be their only chance. Captain Miller and the Horizon Dawn arrived at New Pittsburgh just as the harvester ships entered the system. The human ship looked tiny next to the massive coalition vessels, but Miller had learned something important from his previous battles with the aliens. They're not as smart as they think they are, he told his crew. They have all this power, but they don't know how to use it properly. The harvester ships took position above New Pittsburgh and began their assault. Beams of energy lanced down from orbit, turning sections of the planet's surface into molten glass. The attack was designed to terrify the population into surrender, but the humans were ready. As the first energy beams struck the surface, Sarah Blake triggered the mining charges. The explosions raced through the underground tunnels, creating a network of destruction that spread across 3 continents. The planet shook. Earthquakes rippled across the surface, and huge cracks appeared in the ground. The harvester ships, designed to operate in stable space, found themselves dealing with a planet that was literally fighting back. What is happening? Demanded Admiral Korath, the coalition commander in charge of the harvester fleet. The planet is unstable. His science officer, a nervous Krell named Vexkill, studied the readings. The humans have somehow weaponized their own world. The seismic activity is off the charts. The earthquakes were just the beginning. Sarah Blake had calculated that the explosions would destabilize the planet's magnetic field, creating massive electromagnetic pulses that would interfere with the coalition's sensors and communications. The harvester ships found themselves blind and deaf, unable to coordinate their attacks. Their massive size, which was usually an advantage, became a liability as they struggled to maneuver around the planet's unstable gravitational field. Captain Miller saw his chance. Rodriguez, target the lead ship's sensor array. If we can blind them completely, they'll have to retreat. The Horizon Dawn was still badly damaged from the previous battles, but it was fast and maneuverable. Miller used the planet's electromagnetic chaos to hide his ship's approach, then struck at the harvester's most vulnerable point. The attack succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The massive ship's sensors went dark, and it began to drift helplessly. The other 2 harvester ships tried to help, but the planet's unstable conditions made it impossible to get close. On the surface, the colonists were fighting a different kind of battle. The earthquake had damaged their cities, but it had also created opportunities. Huge cracks in the ground provided perfect hiding places for human fighters. Commander Lisa Park led a group of colonial marines against coalition landing forces. She was a tough woman who had grown up in the asteroid mines, and she knew how to fight in difficult conditions. They're trying to secure the power plant, she reported to the Colonial Command Center. If they take it, they can restore their sensors. Stop them, came the reply. Whatever it takes. Lisa and her Marines moved through the ruined city, using the earthquake damage as cover. The coalition soldiers were confused and disoriented. They had never fought in conditions like this. The battle for the power plant lasted 6 hours. The coalition forces had superior numbers and equipment, But the humans had something more important. They were fighting for their home. Young Tom Mitchell, who had come to New Pittsburgh with a group of volunteers from New Montana, found himself face to face with a massive Vorthic warrior. The alien was twice his size and armed with energy weapons that could cut through steel. But Tom had learned something from his father's example. He did not try to fight the alien directly. Instead, he used the unstable ground to his advantage, causing a section of damaged building to collapse on the warrior. The tide of battle turned when Captain Miller made a desperate decision. He rammed the Horizon Dawn into the second harvester ship's engine section. The collision destroyed his ship, but it also crippled the massive Coalition vessel. Miller and his crew evacuated to the planet's surface just as their ship exploded. The blast was visible from orbit, and it sent a message to the Coalition. Humans would rather die than surrender. The third harvester ship tried to continue the assault, but the planet's defensive systems were too chaotic. Every time they tried to target the human positions, earthquakes would shift the landscape, and electromagnetic pulses would blind their sensors. Admiral Korith found himself in an impossible situation. His fleet of planet killers was being defeated by a single world that had turned itself into a weapon. The humans were not just fighting back, they were winning. "Sir, we're receiving a message from the surface," reported his communications officer. Message was from Tom Mitchell, broadcasting from the ruins of New Pittsburgh's capital city. His voice was steady and determined. "This is Tom Mitchell of the New Pittsburgh Defense Force. You have seen what happens when you attack our worlds. We will not surrender. We will not run away. Every planet you attack will fight back the same way. You can destroy our cities, but you cannot destroy our spirit." The message was heard throughout the galaxy. Other species that had been enslaved by the Coalition began to whisper among themselves. If humans could fight like this, maybe they were. Not doomed after all. Admiral Korith made a decision that would have been unthinkable a few weeks before. He ordered his remaining ships to retreat. The Coalition's most powerful weapons had been defeated by human ingenuity and courage. As the harvester ships limped away from New Pittsburgh, Warlord Thexkar received a report that changed everything. The humans had not just survived the attack, they had won. For the first time in Coalition history, their enemies had forced them to retreat. The galaxy was about to learn that the age of the Coalition was coming to an end, and the age of humanity was just beginning. The retreat from New Pittsburgh sent shockwaves through the Coalition Empire. For 2,000 years, they had been the unstoppable force in the galaxy. Now, a species they had never heard of 6 months ago had forced them to run. Warlord Thexkar stood in his command chamber, studying reports from across the galaxy. The news was all bad. On 17 different worlds, enslaved species had begun to rebel. They had heard about the humans who fought back, and they wanted to be free. "The Zelani have seized control of 3 mining worlds," reported his intelligence. "Chief, the Morvuk have destroyed 2 of our supply depots. Even the Ythrak are causing problems." Thexkar's claws scraped against the metal table. These were species the Coalition had conquered centuries ago. They had been broken, defeated, turned into slaves. How could they suddenly find the courage to fight? "It's the humans," he growled. "They have given the others hope. We must crush them completely, or our empire will fall." Admiral Paul Bennett stood in the war room on Earth, looking at the strategic display. The Coalition was gathering their entire fleet for one final assault. Every ship they had was moving toward human space. How many? He asked Colonel Thompson. "Over 300 ships. Everything they have." Thompson's face was grim. "They're coming to end this war once and for all." "What about our fleet?" 47 ships, and most of them are damaged from the previous battles. The odds were impossible. Even with all their victories, Humanity was still massively outnumbered. But Bennett had learned something important from studying the human colonists. Sometimes the smaller force could win if they were smarter and more determined. "Send word to all ships," he ordered. "We'll make our stand at the Proxima system. If we lose there, Earth falls." The final battle would be fought in the asteroid belt around Proxima Centauri. Bennett had chosen the location carefully. The asteroids would provide cover for the smaller human ships and make it harder for the Coalition to use their numerical advantage. Captain Jake Miller had been given command of a new ship, the Defiance. It was not as advanced as the Coalition vessels, but it was built with everything humans had learned from their previous battles. It was fast, tough, and designed for the kind of hit-and-run tactics that had served them well. "Sir, Coalition fleet is approaching," reported his new communications officer, Lieutenant Danny Roberts. 312 ships. They'll be in weapons range in 20 minutes. Miller looked at his tactical display. The human fleet was spread throughout the asteroid field, hidden and waiting. It was like the old story of David and Goliath, except this time David had friends. "All ships, this is Admiral Bennett," came the voice over the communication system. "Today, we fight for more than just our survival. We fight for the freedom of every species in the galaxy. Show them what humans can do." The Coalition fleet entered the asteroid field in perfect formation. Warlord Thexkar led them personally in his flagship, the Annihilator. He expected the humans to meet them in open battle, as honorable warriors should. Instead, the humans disappeared. "Where are they?" Thexkar demanded. "Scan every asteroid." But the humans had learned to use space itself as a weapon. They hid behind asteroids, inside hollowed-out rocks, even in the shadows of the larger Coalition ships. When they attacked, it was from everywhere at once. Miller led the first strike. The Defiance and 5 other ships emerged from behind a massive asteroid and hit the Coalition's left flank. Before the aliens could respond, the human ships vanished again into the asteroid field. "Cowards!" roared Admiral Vexter. "They fight like insects, hiding in the dark." But Thexkar was beginning to understand. The humans were not cowards. They were predators, using pack tactics to bring down a larger enemy. They struck where the Coalition was weak, then faded away before reinforcements could arrive. The battle raged for 12 hours. The Coalition had more ships and bigger guns, but they could not pin down the elusive human fleet. Every time they thought they had cornered the humans, their enemies would strike from a different direction. Dr. Lisa Carter, now serving as a tactical advisor on Admiral Bennett's flagship, made a crucial discovery. "Admiral, I've been analyzing their formations. They're predictable. They always respond to attacks the same way." "What do you mean?" "When we hit their left flank, they always send reinforcements from the right. When we attack from above, they move ships from below. We can use that against them." Bennett smiled grimly. "Send the signal to all ships. Operation Nostrap is a go." The humans had prepared a trap. They had placed explosive charges on several large asteroids, turning them into massive mines. When the Coalition fleet moved into position, the asteroids would detonate, creating chaos in their perfect formations. Miller led a group of ships in a seemingly desperate attack on the Coalition center. As expected, the aliens responded by moving ships from both flanks to reinforce their threatened position. That was when the asteroids exploded. The blasts tore through the Coalition formation, destroying dozens of ships and scattering the rest. In the confusion, the entire human fleet attacked at once, striking from every direction. The battle turned into a chaotic melee. Ships fought ship to ship among the floating debris. The Coalition's advantage in numbers meant less when they could not coordinate their attacks. Colonel Jack Thompson led a boarding party onto one of the Coalition's command ships. His Marines fought through the corridors with a determination that shocked the alien crew. These humans fought like they had nothing to lose because they truly believed they did not. Secure the bridge, Thompson ordered his soldiers. Take their command codes. The Marines stormed the bridge, overwhelming the surprised alien officers. Within minutes, they had control of the ship's communication systems. This is Colonel Thompson. To all Coalition vessels, he broadcast. Your command ship is under human control. Surrender now, or we will turn your own weapons against you. Some Coalition ships tried to fight on, but their morale was breaking. They had never faced an enemy that could capture their own vessels and use them against them. The turning point came when Captain Miller found himself face to face with Warlord Dex-Kar. The alien leader had boarded the Defiance with a group of his elite guards, intending to kill the human commander personally. You have cost me everything, Dex-Kar snarled, his claws extended. But I will have your head as a trophy. Miller drew his sidearm, but he knew it would do little good against the massive alien. Dex-Kar was 12 feet tall, armored, and had killed hundreds of enemies in personal combat. You're right, Miller said calmly. I have cost you everything. Your empire is falling apart. Your slaves are rebelling. And it's all because you made one mistake. What mistake? Dex-Kar demanded. You thought humans were prey. The fight that followed was brutal and short. Dex-Kar was stronger and better armed, but Miller was smarter and more desperate. He used the ship's artificial gravity against the alien, luring him into a section where the gravity could be reversed. When Dex-Kar found himself floating helplessly, Miller delivered the killing blow. The ruler of the Coalition died not in glorious battle, but defeated by human ingenuity. News of Dex-Kar's death spread quickly through both fleets. The Coalition forces, leaderless and demoralized, began to surrender. The humans had done the impossible. They had defeated the galaxy's apex predators. In the aftermath of the battle, Admiral Bennett stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the wreckage of the Coalition fleet. 47 human ships had defeated over 300 alien vessels. It was the greatest victory in human history. Sir, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy, reported his communications officer. The enslaved species are declaring their independence. The Coalition empire is collapsing. Bennett nodded. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had become the dominant power in the galaxy, but they would need to be better than the Coalition had been. Send a message to all species, he ordered. Tell them that humanity offers friendship and protection to those who want it. We will not rule through fear like the Coalition did. Dr. Carter approached the Admiral with a report. The Coalition. Survivors are asking for terms. What should we tell them? Tell them they can live in peace if they give up their weapons and free their slaves. We're not conquerors. We're liberators. Captain Miller stood among the wreckage of the Coalition flagship, thinking about how much had changed. 6 months ago, humans had been unknown in the galaxy. Now they were the apex predators, the species that other races looked to for protection and leadership. But Miller knew something the Coalition had never understood. Being the strongest did not mean being the most cruel. Humans had become apex predators not through size or strength, but through intelligence, adaptability, and the willingness to fight for what was right. The galaxy had new rulers now. And for the first time in thousands of years, those rulers cared more about protecting the weak than dominating the strong. The age of the Coalition was over. The age of humanity had begun. And the galaxy would be a better place because of it.